she's a crazy lady, and ooh, she's a bright design. I'm a crazy mirror. We're a couple of wise women. Ooh, she's a loud explosion. Ooh, she's a fiery sign.
Hola, Amazons, as Wonder Woman used to say to her sisters on Paradise Isle. The following program is being brought to you tonight not by Mobil Oil, but by Dyke Elbow Grease. What? Yes, this small cadre of smiling women with bad reputations have given up their Saturday mornings to acquire the skills which will either titillate, outrage, or entrance your senses for the next half hour. My name is Maria Helena Dolan, your token Latina for the evening, and I'm a member of the Atlanta Lesbian Feminist Alliance, or ALFA. ALFA is 10 years old next month. It's one of the oldest lesbian organizations in continuous existence here in the United States. And tonight we're going to be discussing what ALFA is, what she does, how she came into being, and we're going to have a few guests, a few films to show you, various things. I'd like to introduce my first guest. This is Lorraine Fontana. She's one of the founding mothers of ALFA and also a current member. She's also a member of the National Lawyers Guild and is working actively in the National Anti-Klan Network. I'm glad you could make it, Lorraine.
Thanks.
I'd like to ask you, I mean, a lot of people don't believe in parthenogenesis anymore, you know, the spontaneous eruption of things from the ground or whatever.
Right.
So how did ALFA spring into being?
Well, it was in 1972, and I think a lot of other things started into being at that time also, especially in Atlanta. Existing already at that time were many things that involved women that eventually formed ALFA. One was Sojourner Truth Press, which is a women's press here. Another was the Gay Liberation Front, which had both gay men and lesbian women. Another was Atlanta Women's Liberation, which was just about in its dying days at that period, which had both straight and gay women in it. From those areas, as well as from other political movements and from the lesbian community that had existed already, from all those places, women got together. Basically, I think the feeling was some women didn't want to deal with the sexism of the gay movement anymore, and Gay Liberation Front, although they had many feminist men in it, they were sometimes hard to deal with. Some women wanted to have a woman-only space, wanted to get away from having to deal with that part of their oppression and deal with other women and build something from a position of strength.
And did some people think it odd that lesbians would want to be with other lesbians? I mean,
well, I guess that's always true. There are some people who feel that they use the word separatism, meaning that maybe we want to withdraw ourselves completely from gay men, for instance, or from straight women. The idea was not to be separatist in our goals, but to be separatist in terms of an organization and a place for lesbians.
so many of these people who were involved at ALFA's inception had a political perspective or background. They were fairly active, would you say?
Yes.
That? How many people are we talking about?
Well, that's hard to say. Our first meeting was in June of '72, June 23rd to be exact. I don't have the exact count of people at that meeting, but I'd say there were probably 15 or 20 women who regularly came to our first series of meetings.
And what did they start doing, you know, at these meetings? I mean, I think it's hard for people who haven't been to lesbian meetings to imagine what goes on, you know.
Well, probably our first meetings were in a way similar to any organization's first meetings. That is, you have to figure out, what do we want? We all seemed to want an organization. We didn't have a name to begin with. We didn't have a structure. We didn't have goals.
But eventually you did get some goals.
Yeah.
And what were those?
Well, I think a lot of our goals revolved around having a woman's only space, and from there, developing more of our analysis of what lesbian feminists were about. What we could add both politically, socially, and culturally to the women's community and to the community in general.
And how would you characterize those things?
Well, I think that, first of all, we became a resource center for lesbians and women in general. We have a library which is fairly large now and has become a library and archives. And at that time, it was just beginning, but we did have those kind of resources. We also started a radio show on the just beginning WRFG radio station, Lesbian Woman. We had rap groups for women. We had discussion groups. We had sports, which eventually developed in our second year into sponsoring an out lesbian softball team in the City League.
And do we still have those things, or, you know, how would you characterize ALFA today and contrast it with ALFA yesterday?
Well, I think basically ALFA today has grown much more stable. That is that we have a newsletter now. We had a newsletter starting in our second year in '73. It is still going, and it's much stronger, much more complete, and it's a much better newsletter. We still are a social organization. We still are a cultural organization. We still are political, but we are a little less political than we were then. And by that I mean that a lot of the women that came into ALFA at very first were from other political movements, whether it was anti-war movement, whether it was supporting the United Farm Workers, whether it was working class movement or the women's movement. We found out that to be a successful organization, we had to be open to all lesbians, whatever their politics or lack of politics, whatever their interests.
So ALFA is still open to all women,
It's open to all women.
Well, it's good to hear. Things don't always change that much. Well, thank you for being with us and sharing with us some of your herstory.
Thank you.
And now Elizabeth Knowlton is joining us. She's a member of the Atlanta Lesbian Writers Group. She's a librarian and archivist and a gardener and a runner. Elizabeth, glad you could join us. You're an 8-year-old member of ALFA.
Right, that's right.
So you have some perspective on how things have developed over the years. I'd like to talk specifically with you about the library, since I understand that's your abiding passion.
Yes, that's true. The library was already here when I joined ALFA. It had begun actually by Lorraine Fontana when she was first in ALFA. And it was
in her house, right?
Well, for a while it was in her house. At first it was in the old ALFA house on Mansfield. This is all before me. And then when that house was let go, the library was stored temporarily in Lorraine. So my first introduction to the library was in the house on McClendon, and the boxes were brought from Lorraine's apartment, and we actually arranged them. In those days, there was no furniture in the house. We thought it was wonderful that there were bookshelves to put the books in, and we all sat in cushions on the floor.
Great. Well, what kind of materials do you have in the library now? I mean, you started with, you know, X number of books, and now you have, you said, what, 1,000 books? Or?
Yeah, we've got about 1,000 books and about maybe 30 cubic feet of periodicals from all over the United States, women's, specifically lesbian, feminist, other related groups, and we have about maybe 12 cubic feet of archival material.
Can you talk a little bit about that archival resource? Because that's a new development here at the library, is it not?
Okay, well, the most important part of it are the ALFA archives themselves, which are the minutes of our organization from the earliest days all the way up until now, and then copies of our newsletter from the first issue in 1973, and collections of flyers and other material produced by the organization.
Well, how does the library run itself?
There's a committee. Basically, there's two of us steady people who come every week and are always there, Judy M. and I. And then there are other people who drop in once in a while to help with the sort of duller things like pasting pockets in the back of books or checking in the periodicals so we know what we have, keeping records. We also answer letters. The library committee answers mail when people write in and ask things. And that's some of the most exciting part, because we answer letters from little towns all around Georgia and the southeast, women who've never had contact with other lesbians.
And who has availability or access to library materials?
Okay. Any women who come into the house may, of course, sit there and use the material and look at it. Any member of ALFA may check out 2 books at a time, sort of like regular, ordinary library rules. And we can do a certain amount of copying of the archival material and the periodicals. We don't let those go out of the library.
You get donations, or solicit material?
Yeah, that is a problem. The library was begun by Lorraine, and she put a great deal of her time and money into it. Now we get most of our books from the little publishing companies that publish them, because many of the books we have aren't done by the above-ground press.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will send us books that, you can't find in any other library in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And we write reviews of them, publish them in Atalanta, try to get, circulation for them, try to get Karis to carry them. And in return, we can keep the review copy for the library.
Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I'm glad that this resource exists, for the entire community. And it's something that isn't very common either.
Yeah, that's the most exciting thing about the library, is getting people to be able to communicate with others around the country and around the community through these printed materials.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
How's it look?
It's too low. It's too high. It's too high.
What are y'all doing?
We're running the ALFA newsletter, Atalanta.
What does it contain?
Lesbian propaganda, mostly. It also has the minutes of the ALFA meetings and goings-on in the community, and people send clips from all over the country about publications, Sinister Wisdom, and Lesbian Lies, Common Lies, and it has letters to the editor, which are always exciting.
Controversial, eh?
Very controversial. It has a little calendar, what's going on in the lesbian community, and it has fingerprints.
Fingerprints? You mean you're all on file somewhere?
It also has political information about what the Atlanta Lesbian Feminist Alliance is doing politically in the community.
Uh-huh.
The wonderful thing about the newsletter is it's one committee of ALFA that does an incredibly efficient job in a real short period of time.
In a short space also, I noticed.
In a small
This is the kitchen.
space. In one, from 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning until 2 in the afternoon, we print between 16 and 18 pages of a newsletter, collate it, staple it, fold it, and get it ready to go in the mail.
Wow.
In an edition of 360.
Well, I take it back, everything I've said about us being a disorganized community. Why don't you show some of the former covers?
Here's the former cover, volume 10, number 1. Here's another former cover, volume 10, number 2. This was during the winter, February, when it was very cold. See, usually our covers are based on themes, but the inside never is. And then here's volume 10, number 3. It was spring, March, see, so we had rain and showers and then a flower, spring flower.
Right. Well, I don't want to interrupt your work any longer than this.
Roll it.
So roll it.
It's rolling.
It's rolling.
I gotta wear my very own.
Well, ALFA isn't all political duty, though. I don't want to misrepresent her overly much. And to prove it, we also have Athena with us tonight, who is another ALFAN and a Boogie woman, a counselor and a pagan. Athena, what is a Boogie woman?
Well, a Boogie woman is basically someone who likes to have fun. And we are sort of the social part of ALFA.
Ah. Well, what kind of fun can ALFA offer? I mean, and whatever you can say on camera, you know.
Well, we have a lot of different kinds of fun. July 17th, we're going to be showing the film of the making of the Judy Chicago dinner party.
Uh-huh.
We
that
held,
exhibit's going to be here. So,
yeah. And in the past, we held perhaps the world's first dyke tour of homes. And
lesbians open their home to other lesbians, huh?
whenever possible. And we hold frequent open houses. Every Friday night we have an open house,
Uh-huh.
chemical free. And We have potlucks for newcomers, which I suppose is one of our most important functions, sort of forming a bridge.
I see, making people feel welcome and less isolated.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's a real important function.
Uh-huh.
And Boogie Women have sponsored a number of things, I know, throughout. They have raffles and bake sales. I mean, is that, do we raise money for lesbians that way?
Well, I certainly wouldn't rule it out. We have an annual cat show, and all of the community lesbians' cats have an opportunity to compete with one another for prizes such as world's largest paws or various distinctions.
Yes. Is it true what they say that most lesbians favor cats?
I would say so, objectively speaking, from my own observations.
Yes, and you also have several, I know.
Oh, yes, yes.
Well, how are the Boogie Women involved with the coming up ALFA celebration? Just tell us kind of quickly.
Well, we're actually in a support kind of role. We are hoping to be able to support the birthday committee as much as we can. They're doing some really tremendous work, and Boogie Women would just like to be there however they need us.
So the Boogie Women are for women who like to have a good time.
Absolutely.
I think that's most of us.
Other good times at ALFA include softball and chorus.
She was a big, tough woman, the first to come along, that showed me being female meant you still could be strong. And though graduation meant that we had to part, she'll always be a player on the ball field of my heart. I wrote her name on my notepad and I inked it on my dress. And I etched it on my locker. What I did for love, kiss today goodbye, the sweetness and the sorrow. What we did we had to
It looks like the Cologne Army here, but actually it's Peachy and I. She's the ALFA Outreach Coordinator, a lesbian feminist entertainer and mime, and very available for those who need to know. Peachy, what are you doing on this show anyways? You're supposed to be telling us about outreach.
Outreach.
Do you have a far grasp or what? What are you talking about?
That's a big question. Do you want to know about the program?
Yes, tell us about the program.
Well, the outreach program came about a couple of years ago when an anonymous birthday gift of some money was donated to ALFA. And at the time, the general meeting made a decision to utilize the money to develop a program for outreach, which was necessary in the community to educate people socially, culturally, politically, and to have a good time.
So who are you outreaching to? I mean, is that ALFA trying to be more inclusive and less?
Well, mainly what the main purpose of the program is to let lesbians and non-lesbians know who we are, what we look like, the way we live, the way we love, phone numbers.
Right. I hear they always proselytize. I don't know. I found it very difficult to get proselytized at ALFA when I initially came. So
You should come around 3.
It's not true what people say. They just think that. But I'm interested a little bit in the development of that program. You know, who has fit into that slot and what has that slot consisted of?
Well, the majority of the work or the program, that's the way it's set up, is done by a modestly salaried outreach coordinator who is aptly assisted by a college-credited student intern from Antioch. And there's a checks and balances system that is done by a volunteer outreach committee, and everyone works together in conjunction with the organization ALFA. So there's daily tasks such as staffing the house, answering the phone, taking messages, distributing and updating literature. There's methods of outreach such as education through workshops and speaking engagements. There's fundraisers. Part of the way that the program works is in order to maintain it, the actual group has to replenish its own money to pay out the people. And this is usually done through fundraisers. We try grants and endowments, but it's more fun to have fundraisers.
It's also getting a little tight for lesbian or gay people to try to have their communities helped out by the government or United Way or anything like that.
Yeah. Fundraisers are a lot quicker, and you can have a social calendar just filled with footloose and fancy free functions where women pretty much come together, and they stay together after that, and lots more come. So it all keeps in with the goals of outreach, which is to educate and bring together socially and culturally. That's one of the things that we try to do in getting bogged down in the routine of running some of the detail work in ALFA to make sure that we have the original spirit, which is outreach, the need for an awareness and an education and an understanding of the community for other lesbians and the world at large. We also interact with a lot of other gay organizations and community involvement too, to get that visibility.
Peachy, there's something I wanted to ask you about in this context of ALFA outreach, and that was ALFA's participation in this year's Lesbian, Gay, Trans Person Pride celebration.
ALFA had a good turnout and a good program set up for Gay Pride. We had, for the week of events, we had workshops, one that was given at Metropolitan Community Church on why lesbian feminism, which Lorraine spoke of earlier about women's only space, which kind of incorporated some of that to explain to some of our other gay organizations why there is a need for autonomy, why ALFA has that particular principle and stays by it. So that was a good workshop. We had a potluck with another black group, a black lesbian group called Sisters. It was an invitational potluck, had a big turnout for that, and got a good combination of people together, and we met at the ALFA house. And then we had the breakfast the next morning before the march. Everybody had bagels and cream cheese and went on off to march. And the march was great. There was a big turnout of women behind the ALFA banner, plus around in the other organizations that we kind of went from banner to banner. The street festival, which was happened the week before, a few women got together and made a huge booth that had a sign that was ALFA, and then there was T-shirts being sold there, and all the updated and current ALFA literature was displayed, with, of course, lemonade and refreshments. You can't put a booth up without lemonade. And the Sunday after the march, ALFA had an open house where there was some workshops going on, one by the Feminist Women's Health Center. There was kind of a wrap-up of the weeks of events that had occurred, and in the evening, Moral Hazard, which is a lesbian no-wave rock and roll band, performed at the SP Lounge. I know. And that was great. That was...
Yes, I danced with you there.
I know, I remember. We danced a lot. Wiped my brow on that one.
Wait, my girlfriend's watching this.
I know she's in there. She just cut my mic off. Hey, now she's cutting my face.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. This has nothing to do with Bo Derek, but it has everything to do with ALFA's 10th birthday. And that's what we're here to talk about now. And with me is Artemis T. Vertigo, who is an active member of ALFA an initiate of the Dykes of Dungeness, which is a Dianic Wiccan coven, and facilitating women's mystery study group and library, and she's an earth dancer. Artemis is also currently a part of the planning and coordinating of the ALFA 10th birthday party. I'm glad you come and tell us a little bit about it. I understand you have been working on this for a while.
Yeah, we have. It'll be 4 days of celebration that have been scheduled to reflect ALFA's growth and lesbian diversity. It's going to speak to the freedom of all women to create our lives empowered and affirmed by our culture. We'll have Thursday night, which is...
What date is that?
August 19th. We'll be opening with a gala art opening and writers forum, and go on to Friday night with a special night of spiritual ritual and dance. Saturday during the day we have a women's fair. Be filled with booths and workshops.
That'll be at the ALFA House?
Right, at the ALFA House. Saturday night will be a concert in Big Whoopee with Peachy, the women's music chorus, and Moral Hazard. Sunday during the day we have a national invitational dyke softball tournament and potluck picnic. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And then Sunday night we'll wrap up with the ALFA birthday party, the traditional party at the ALFA House, with founding mothers, speeches, balloons, cakes, stories.
Damn. It sounds mind-boggling, you know.
Yeah, we have a lot of women involved, more women all the time. We hope to reach all the lesbians in Atlanta and the surrounding area and give each and every one of them something that they could call their own.
Sink their teeth into.
Linda Regner, what does ALFA mean to you?
Well, ALFA means a great deal to me. It means a source of community, a source of a place for me to enjoy social events in a women's space, a place to enjoy a variety of women's skills and culture that I otherwise wouldn't be exposed to across the whole city. I can find it in one place.
Yay. What does ALFA mean to you?
You should have asked me this before I started, but...
Before you started what?
Really, ALFA means to me a place where I can channel my lesbian feminist energy and share my experiences and whatever with other lesbians.
What does ALFA mean to you?
Well, it means like, well,
All told.
All told, it's a place where I can come and be queer, where these women like you can hug me and make me talk to cameras, and I don't feel like, what's the matter with you? I feel like we're real diverse, and that's real cool, because I'm pretty crazy, and it's real nice to know that I can be crazy here and not get smashed.
Tell us a little bit about what ALFA means to you.
ALFA is my favorite institution. She has no ivy growing around her. I really like ALFA. I guess I like ALFA. I haven't prepared the speech in advance, but I really love her, and I think the main reason is that everything else in the lesbian community is friendship groups, lover connections, all of which is wonderful and partly what it's all about. But ALFA is the thing that exists independent of all that, supports all of that, provides something that's beyond personal relationships but includes personal relationships. And I think that is extremely important. I don't know how long it'll be important, but for decades, I would imagine.